Are you ready? What's my name? What's my name? Say Kareem Ali. Say Kareem Ali. You're listening to
Are you serious?
the Hip Hop Debate Show.
Okay, so hear me out.
The official podcast of Kareem Ali. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Hold up. Kareem Ali TV. This is the Are You Serious podcast where we discuss various topics through the lens of hip hop culture. And returning, the co-host is always Slick Vic Low with a bunch of names that I don't want to mention, but happy return to the lyrical Leviathan, that Leviathan guy. Did y'all hear that album? Just wanted you to hear lyrical
Leviathan guy though.
Oh, that mixtape was monstrous. You gotta hear it.
Thelonious Coltrane is cool. You know, Slick Vic Low is pretty good.
That Leviathan guy, I don't want to fuck with him at all.
Though. I don't know.
Hey, listen, we got Jay Swan on here, poet, MC, done this thing over the years, and new to the show, Prince Mac, MC, producer, sings sometimes, but don't ask him to. The self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, still looking like a fetus in the face.
I'm a pretty looking fetus if I do say so myself.
You're definitely the most expert 21-year-old hip hop scholar.
I'm only 20, dog.
20 years old.
You're not even 21 yet. Why?
You're not even an adult yet.
You can't even get any cognac yet.
Okay, about the pussy with pubic hairs with his chin and shit. It's ready.
Whereas though you got the whole bush on yours.
I do. I've grown it. Let's take it.
Do we still have that beard sponsor? We used to have the beard cream sponsor.
He probably dropped me. It was good though. It was good.
We didn't talk enough about the beard cream.
I used a tremendous amount of it, and it got me right. And if you guys, Jay Swan doesn't look like he has the ability to grow one.
Nah. I could grow up head, but I don't know what about down here.
You try to connect that shit and start looking like Anthony Hamilton on the side with the little beady sideburns. Anthony Hamilton looks like an alley mechanic and shit. Well, I tell you what it is. It's a catalytic converter. That's what it is.
Oh shit, that is funny.
Hey, look. So about a week ago, Special Ed was on the podcast. What podcast was that? What podcast was he on? I can't remember. But he said that NWA was basically they basically call social ruin to black people in the black community with what their music did in terms of promoting gangster rap. Slankster Hughes, what do you think about that? What do you think about Special Ed's comments?
Well, it's interesting because there's a large portion of that particular mind frame that it was very prevalent in the time that NWA came out among certain black people, older black people at the time, so-called self-proclaimed, if you will, black leaders, black thought leaders who, your Dionne Warwick types and such, who was like, this gangster rap is destroying black youth and black America. And, let's get bulldozers and run over these CDs that we still had to purchase. And so
Tucker.
Yeah, Dolores
right.
Tucker.
And so there's something about that perspective that is not completely off in terms of that. What we know is that the industry, specifically hip hop in the mainstream, was co-opted by the CIA, and they planted agents to take over in positions in record companies to specifically target the youth of America with a certain message and a certain lower vibration. And so they inundated the market with one kind of hip hop, with the glorified gangster and violence and things of that nature. Now, while that's true, it doesn't necessarily, you can't put NWA in a whole box completely as if this was their mission, or, everything that happened on those NWA albums was all one-sided, as if it didn't produce quality hip hop, as if they weren't expressing quality messages, being the CNN of the hood, if you will. Especially that first album where they were really touching on a lot of really serious social political issues. They were just doing it from their Compton perspective, like what Public Enemy did. I know we're going to get deeper into that comparison. Public Enemy did from their perspective was very similar to what NWA was doing. It was just from a certain perspective. Now, if you want to get into, the next NWA album, how some of it became a little more dated with the gangster romanticism and all of that, there's something to be said about that, but I don't think it's cool to paint it all in just one broad brushstroke of, NWA destroyed the minds of the Black youth necessarily. I think with everything there comes two sides of the conversation.
Joshua Swan, what are your thoughts on this? Have you heard Special Ed's indictment of
I heard a
little
bit of it. I heard a little bit of it, and all I gotta say is that you really can't blame one group for. He said it destroying the minds of Black kids and stuff. I totally disagree. It's like one album or a group, you just can't blame it on one group. It has to. You got to think about where the perspective of where they're coming from, of talking about their art, of their storytelling. Come on, that's like saying the Ghetto Boys were destroying hip hop, or Public Enemy destroying I
think what he was saying is that the industry used that particular group and their messages. And because it's almost like a copycat, like they say, the NBA is a copycat league. A team wins with a particular style, and other teams copy them. Other groups began to push forward with these messages. It began to push positivity and conscious music to the back.
Selling records.
Prince Mac, what do you
got
think
a lot of CB4s came up after.
Yeah, CB4. You see that a lot of that now.
Prince Mac, what do you think about this? I mean, as a younger MC and artist, maybe this reaches back into the past, but do you think that this has had an effect? If you look back as a historian that you so-called yourself?
Black communities, I'm sure if you're weak-minded, not to push any wrong agenda or anything like that, but what I'm saying is in middle school, I listened to NWA. I listened to quite a bit of the hits, as a matter of fact. And me personally, I've turned out just fine. Heck, I rap now, and I don't touch on gangster topics, and I'm not doing anything like that. It can sometimes come down to a nature versus nurture thing. And to be quite honest, it's all about the consumer and what the consumer likes. Sometimes what the media will push, what the consumer will like. But it often also comes down to nature versus nurture and how you were raised. And me personally, I never had that problem. I listened to NWA. It turned out just fine.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that is.
Nature versus nurture. But at the same time, a lot of children in our community, they come from broken homes and they don't have parents there to separate them or separate reality from fiction. Because I grew up with a lot of people that they wanted to be Nino Brown. They wanted to be O-Doug from Minister Society. They didn't have parents to tell them. My mother was telling me, hey, look, you're Trey. Find yourself in the film that you're watching. You're not Doughboy, or you're not the Bishop from Juice. You're someone that's more positive.
You're Quincy.
I'm Quincy. There you go. I mean, my people here, I watched RoboCop in 1987, which was the greatest cursing exhibition of all time. But I knew not to say that shit in real life around my parents or nothing like that. But I did watch the show. I knew not to go out killing people like you're a move creep. However, there are a lot of kids that don't have that. And the minds are malleable, and music is definitely a very powerful form of influence in general in our community. It could be used for that type of programming. So, I mean, in some ways, the CIA probably won. But as far as NWA, I feel like they were like hood reporters. They were talking about things that were going on in Compton at the time that no one wanted to address, at least on the first album, Straight Outta Compton, which was very revolutionary, very impactful. By the time you get to the record in 1991, oh man, you could almost jerk off to that album. It was ridiculous. It was X-rated, bro. It was X-rated. She swallowed it. Don't matter, just don't bite. The world's biggest. It was ridiculous. For those of you who have heard.
Oh yeah, talking about Strawberry, the neighborhood. Oh.
It was once Ice Cube separated from that group, the writing kind of went down a little bit. What are you saying, Slexter?
There's something to be said about how minds can be shaped and influenced, though, especially at a very informative age. Because I grew up, in what can be very much deemed as a cult in the Cedar Joseph Restoration Academy. Like, we weren't only talking about a lot of really revolutionary and, if you will, Pan-African things. We were rapping about it. Like, my aunt was rapping about it in the streets to kids, and then I started rapping about it. But there is always a point in your upbringing where, like, you want to go against the grain, even if subconsciously, of what is in your inner circle. And I can remember having a magazine in 1994 and seeing a photo of NWA on a rooftop and Eazy-E holding an AK-47, and I was absolutely captivated by that shit. Like, I was like, wow, that's what I want to. I want to be that shit on the mic, like on a rooftop with some lokes on, holding an AK-47. It's just cool as shit. Whether you're looking at it as something to romanticize, or you're looking at it as something that is just like, wow, that's like being Scarface in a movie. Right. Imagine that as an MC. And so there's definitely something about the way they were able to kind of magnetize the youth in a way, the imaginations of the youth, whether you look at it as positive, negative, or, just being, creative as storytellers. But I'm telling you, I put that post on my wall and I was like, Eazy-E's the shit.
Right.
Yeah, like to piggyback off you said, it's like, yo, when I was like growing up, like, I had like Biggie, Tupac, like to listen to Jay-Z, Scarface, Icecube, but I never wanted to be those guys. I was like, yeah, like, they cool to listen to. It's like, it didn't want me to make me make gangster rap. So like,
of course not, because you're from the suburbs, right? Your real name's Clarence, and Clarence's parents had a real nice marriage, right?
Grew up in the county, but like, but yeah, it's kind of like
what you say, first, like,
I said rest in peace, Lotto.
Right, exactly. That was
you said Lotto.
Yeah, on 8 Mile
from the movie.
He died.
Oh yeah, he did pass away. Yeah, he did.
Honky sue me. Black guy doesn't die in this movie.
Right. I spit a racial slur. Honky sue me. This here is a horror fic, but a black guy doesn't die in this movie. That shit was hard.
Oh.
Yeah. What you were saying, Jay Swan?
Yeah, but like, it didn't want to do like crime or like sell drugs or anything like that. It's like, yo, it's just their way of them expressing themselves at the end of the day. It's like, I remember
I can't blame NWA. I do think that there has to be some accountability on the artists for the messages that they put out, knowing that this system of white supremacy has been at war with us. And so things that we say or do can be used against us. And they have used those things against us. It's not necessarily the artist's fault, but some kids are deeply influenced by that negativity. So you have to be mindful of that for sure. They use these tropes, and they've been using it since the 20s, ever since that movie Birth of the Nation came out. The black male is almost used like a super crime lord or a drug figure,
apex predator, and
the women are used as they have the whole trope, which is what you see playing out right now in front of your very eyes. All you see is stripper rap. You see Coochie Pink, Broody Hole Brown, which the lie detector determined that was a lie. It wasn't.
Oh, come on, bro. Don't do it like that, man.
Wow.
What I'm saying is, like, every female MC out here that makes it, they only can make it if they fit the status quo of what this system wants people to believe about black people, black women, black men. You get rewarded for that. You seem to climb to a higher level in the echelon of what they present than you do if you're presenting yourself in a more positive way. All you see
except for Lil Sims.
Yeah. I don't even know who Lil Sims is. Who's that?
She a MC.
I mean, you have them. Don't get me wrong; they exist. You have your Rhapsodies and stuff like that. But I saw Nicki Minaj back in like the mid 2000s, like old footage of her, and she was pretty good, but she had no titties, no ass. But the fact that she felt like she had to get a bionic body in order to, and she was actually right, because what she did, she kind of blew up in a way. So
Onika.
What do you feel about that? Go ahead, Slice.
I mean, it's something to be said about too, about how those particular tropes that are used and weaponized against the Black community, how are those things reinforced by our own surroundings? Because since I know that when a lot of that music was coming out back then, like I was surrounded in my neighborhood by people who were not just glorifying that culture, but were a part of that culture. Like you go outside and the guy who's the steady QB for your pickup football game is selling drugs in between throwing passes to you, and and so these are the people you're looking up to in your community, and for a lot of us those are the only older male figures that we're around, and so how does that reinforce? If you see that and then you hear people glorifying what you're seeing in the music, like automatically you're attracted to that. And then there was a shift though, because there was a time period where it was cool to be talking about empowerment of Black people, knowledge about your history, like people rapping about that became a fad too.
And they made sure they put an end to that shit, Slankster.
Exactly. And then you saw the shift where they were like, oh, this Public Enemy thing, this Jungle Brothers thing, like we need to make sure that people are listening to more NWA type groups, and that is the predominant thing.
The whole Native Tongues.
The whole Native
Tongues.
Well, it's not like we were ever creating just one message. We were being inundated with one message as opposed to it being a platform.
When they saw that we were being politicized by the music, they had to put a stop to it.
They did the same thing to the hip hop industry that they did to the Black Panther and to the
I was about to get into that.
They attacked
Jay Swan. Jay Swan has a point. Let him make
Hey, yo, Kareem, do you remember there was maybe 15 years ago, you and Kirby at the one hip hop shop, you did a video and you were talking about how who was like the J. Edgar Hoover of hip hop. You remember that?
I do remember. I don't remember what the outgrowth of it was, but I remember doing it. I remember you being there. It was like my early days of trying to do what I'm doing now with less technology and less light.
Yeah, so it has to be a J. Edgar Hoover, because like it was so much going on as far as like that time period where it's like, oh, they didn't want to hear that Black power shit and like bring like the community together. They just want to take that all away. So
people use excuses to say that positive music doesn't sell, but that's a lie, because at one point Public Enemy was the biggest hip hop group in the world.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
and they made sure Native Tongues, Arrested Development, De La Soul Tribe. All those groups were prominent in our community, and in that particular time period, you could listen to an NWA album and a PE album. You could listen to Brand Nubian and The Chronic,
De La
things
Soul,
of that nature. You get those things every Tuesday when the albums would drop. And then all of a sudden, they started to move away. It's like, I don't know, people start losing their deals. You remember you had Steph Love X. You had what's that group that MF Doom was a part of before he became
KMD.
KMD. Thank you, historian. KMD.
Or a positive cause in a much damaged society.
People exactly. People were calling them weirdo hip hop groups. The Far Side, they couldn't cut it, and they were moving away. They used Snoop and Dre and that type of music and that type of style to put before us. Whereas we weren't getting the other side of it anymore, and everything. The force became unbalanced. When those Luke Skywalker, someone needed to come through with a mic saber and slay
the Far Side had the #1 album in the country.
They did.
I think it definitely was purposely done. In my opinion, I don't think it's necessarily
it's been documented. It's been documented that there was specific meetings and strategic plans put out. By people who were planted, like the same way they did in the 60s, in the 70s and the 60s, they were planting people in, Panther chapters and stuff. They were planting people at labels.
So the question is, though, Vic, how much responsibility does the artist or does NWA hold, or does Sexy Red or Megan Thee Stallion, or these people hold for
I think
their
that
product, or is it all the industry? Is it all the system?
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out Kirby Griffin and Hip Hop One spot. That was the spot back in the day. The Hip Hop One shop. Got a lot of dope shirts from there. Kirby doing big things on the cinematic tip. Now with documentaries and all that. But I think that absolutely there is an aspect that is the individual artist's responsibility, and then there is the cultural responsibility of the entire community as a whole. And certain things, when we're not united in the front, there's room for the enemy to get in a lot easier. And I think that the same way that a lot of these young artists now are not as aware of some of the pitfalls of who's controlling the narrative by controlling your money. Back then, you know, even if you watch what was documented in the Straight Outta Compton film, like NWA were very early on oblivious to not just the basic parts of the business. If you see the way that they got railroaded, but oblivious to, you know, the perspective of who's controlling your message and how they're manipulating what you're doing with your talent. And so to their not to their fault, but they were unaware of a lot of what was happening early on, not just business wise, but also, you know, with how that they were being controlled from a creative standpoint. And I think that it's important.
They were being used like so many other black artists.
Awareness, right?
Used.
We can't even have the onus of the responsibility on us if we're not first making ourselves aware of what's happening.
And that was so early on. How could they have ever known? They probably didn't have that type of understanding.
Well, as far as hip hop, nobody controlled Chuck D's narrative, you know. And then
Chuck D was a grown man.
A lot older.
He was a grown man when he came to hip hop. It was like 26.
Same thing with like Wise Intelligent and Poor Righteous Teachers. Like, so like if you're coming into a industry situation, you know, it's a lot to be said for your level of knowledge itself and to understanding what you're trying to bring to the table versus just how much money is on the table.
Okay, I'm gonna give a final thought to Prince Mac. Have you have anything to say about this subject?
I'm just soaking in. I'm just soaking in the message, to be quite honest, brother.
I see you got the Tribe Called Quest shirt. You know what I'm saying?
So, your lucky shirts.
Hey, that's their first album, right?
No, this is actually Midnight Marauders. You can't tell because
Midnight Marauders.
Also one of the greatest albums of all time. Don't know where I would rank it.
I would argue their best, but that's a different show.
I
might got to that top 20. Midnight Marauders.
That might be kind of low, but
we'll
talk. We'll talk top 20. Might be kind of low.
Jay Swan take there.
Yeah, but okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Kareem Ali TV, are you serious? Slikester, you're supposed to come. You're fucking it up. Slikester.
Oh, I'm serious. I'm quite serious.
I just don't.
Seriously, like
serious, delirious, curious.
Man, y'all know this. I can't.
Styles like furious.
I can't.
So I have to stand here today as what I was when I was born, a black man.
Your racism bounces off me, I'm bulletproof. Your prejudice gets deflected, I'm bulletproof. Your hatred can't penetrate me, I'm bulletproof. Our minds can't be shackled no more, nah, we know the truth. Yeah, from the spot that Malcolm stood, looking out through the window, I'm looking out over my